Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who has helped me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Michelle Seguin, who discusses the very untimely death of her son, death due to a medical complication. He died at a very young age. He was a very vibrant person. Michelle describes her son's loss as just such a devastating event in her life. Her grieving was 7 years or so. It was through a series of events, and I want for you to listen for what that is, that helped her realize she has got to get out of this grieving mode she's in and start a new life. It is a very touching story. Marty, what are some takeaways our listeners can gain through Michelle?
Ron, like you said, it's a touching story to lose a child, because that's not what we think. We think, oh, the parents, we go first, and then the child. But she brought up a point about when this happened, those people that have never lost a child or never have gone through a loss say things that they mean well, but it's not helpful. So we asked, what do you do? And she said, just come to me and say, I'm here for you. How can I help you?
Empathy and being willing to listen, just be that safe space. It's a great opportunity to listen and learn together. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. Our listeners are going to be very interested in your tragic life story. Unfortunately, you lost a son in 2013. None of us want to go through that kind of experience. But through it all, you've learned how to cope with, and there was a time, I think you may say, and you wrote about it, larger than life, a mother's love, loss, and her journey back to living. How you were able to recover from that. Michelle, it's great to have you with us.
Good to be here.
Michelle, can you give our listeners a brief overview of just what it was you experienced? And the emphasis is, how did you recover? Some of our listeners may be experiencing exactly what you experienced nearly 11 years ago.
Absolutely. Back in 2013, my son was a very, very mature for his age, and he got a stomach ache one day. He never had anything but a simple cold before that, completely healthy. They actually found a tumor in his abdomen. They did surgery on him about 5 weeks later, and he passed away within 24 hours of the surgery. It was a beyond devastating time for me. Losing a child literally will bring you to your knees. We were super close, and so it was a very difficult process to go through. I remember walking out of the hospital that day. You're completely shattered. Your future is shattered. Your dreams are shattered. Your life is shattered. Everything you've known for years and years and years is all of a sudden shattered. I remember walking out of the hospital in such a daze, trying to figure out, how do I even begin to put one foot in front of the other and move on? For a long time, it was really hard to do that. I mean, every morning when I woke up, I would open my eyes, and for that brief second, you would think, oh my goodness, it was the most horrible nightmare I've ever had. The minute that sentence went through your mind, the reality of what I was dealing with would just literally punch me in the face. And it's like, oh my God, it's not a bad dream. It's not a nightmare. This is my reality now. For a long time, I struggled. I'm not going to lie. I struggled very hard to try and make sense of why this happened, why I had to be put through this, why my son had to be taken away. As the emotions come up, your body can only handle so much. And I found that for the first quite some time, you'd start that grieving process, but your body would just get so exhausted from the pain and sadness that you were feeling that you would literally go into a freeze state of your body. Your nervous system would literally go into a freeze state, and you just go completely numb. And though I was going to work, I was, moving forward in life, I was putting one foot in front of the other, but I wasn't living. I wasn't able to really move forward. I was stuck in July 25th, 2013. As hard as I tried to move forward, it was a struggle. And so by the time 2018 rolled around, my job was really stressful. I had a lot going on. I was still grieving my son. This is something that takes years to recover from. And I eventually, in July of 2018, I ended up on bed rest. And I spent close to 2 years on bed rest, unable to really function. I had a severe flare up of fibromyalgia, chronic pain syndrome. And some days, just trying to turn the TV on, for example, was a challenge because my hands were in so much pain. By early 2020, I was continuing to deteriorate, and I was having a lot of trouble with my stomach, and I was basically down to eating Jello and drinking water. And some days even that would cause me to be curled in the fetal position in bed, just in tears because I was in so much pain. One day I was laying there. By that point, everyone around me had pretty much given up on me and thought that I was going to pass. They figured I probably only had months to live. I felt Devin there with me. I felt like it was time. I truly needed to make a decision. I had told myself since 2013, I had to move on for Devin. I had to move on for Devin. He'd want that for me. But as I laid there that day, it was really a decision I felt like I had to make. It was time to go be with him once and for all, or it was time to fight for my life. Obviously, I chose to fight for my life because as that thought crossed my mind, I just remember thinking, like, how dare you think this is even an option? Devin's wife was expecting their first daughter when he passed away, their first child. And she was in her first trimester. And I was just like, he would give anything to be there for his daughter, anything at all. How dare I even think this is an option? And there was just something in me snapped or clicked at that time. And I just knew I had to fight for my life. At that time, I wasn't 100% sure how I was going to do it. My health was the worst it's ever been. But I just made that decision that I have to trust. I have to trust that I'll figure this out. And then shortly after that, about a week or so after that, I had crawled into bed and again, keep in mind, like, I could barely move. Getting out of bed put me into a cold sweat from the pain. It was that intense. And as I laid there dozing off, all of a sudden I heard this song, and I'll never forget that because I just started chuckling. Devin has come to me a lot through music since he passed. I was just sitting there and, starting to doze, and all of a sudden I heard this song, The Purple People Eater. And I started laughing, and I was like, okay. Usually it's songs that I don't know that come to me, but this time it was a song I knew. And I'm like, okay, Devin, where are we going with this? Because this is unusual. But I just went with it and just laid there and listened to the music that I could hear playing, and just feeling him right there beside me. And all of a sudden it just felt like I was levitated off the bed a foot or two. I wasn't scared. Like, it didn't cause me any fear whatsoever. And then as I laid there still, I just felt like bright white light just start circling me in every direction, and head to toe, side to side, round and round. It was so peaceful, and I just felt so much weight breaking away from me as that happened. And I just remember laying there and still just hearing that song and listening to that song and feeling Devin right there by my side. And the next thing I knew, I woke up. I was like, wow, that was an interesting evening. And then I got out of bed and I took about 2 steps, and I just stopped dead in my tracks. And I was like, wait a second, something's different. As I stood there, I was moving my hands and stuff, and they still were sore, but not like the fibro sore, the pain that you get from fibromyalgia and chronic pain. And so I was like, huh, okay, that's kind of interesting, and kind of start moving my arms a little bit more. And then I kind of took a couple more steps and was at the end of the bed. And I'm at the end of the bed and I just start dancing, and I'm like, oh my God, like I can move again. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it other than that. It was just such an amazing feeling. And I just like, I didn't know how, I didn't know why. I just knew something had shifted from the night before, and I was able to finally move again. That day, as I sat at home, I just became extremely determined to read. I mean, I hadn't been able to read anything. I was in the business world for many years. And so when I ended up on bed rest, not being able to read, not being able to utilize my mind, I was a designated accountant. So I did a lot of mind type work. That first day, I was just so drawn, like I just felt like a computer needing more information. And I started downloading books off of just ebooks. And as I looked at titles in that, the ones that I was really drawn to were really talking about, meditations and affirmations, and just learning how to, I guess, just give myself some self-love. And that's something that I had never really done my whole life. As I read and as I started to get moving around a bit more, I really wanted to be out in nature more. I started walking outside. We live on an acreage, so I've got a beautiful walk out there that I can go on, spending time in the sunlight and just allowing myself to fully recharge. There was just such a determination within me at that point that I knew, based on how deteriorated I was at the time, I knew that this was going to be a long road back. But I also knew I had to do it for Devin. I had to do it for my other son, Brandon, and I had to do it for my granddaughter. So I started that fight, and I really just started walking, reading, again, putting myself first, and just learning to have positive self-talk was a big, big part of my journey in getting through this and healing. I started there, and I spent a long time just really going down that path, and learning to meditate a bit, be so centered in the moment versus worrying about everything else that was going on around me. The more I was able to focus and the more I worked on that, the little steps became bigger steps. As I continued, even right down to, I started using affirmations even into, I would make them into songs so that if the negative self-talk started coming up, I would literally start singing songs that I had made with affirmations just to keep that positive self-talk within me and really teach my mind that it didn't have control over me anymore. I had to start to live from the heart versus the mind and really trust in myself through the whole process. And the more I did that, the more I grew, the more I was figuring life out again. Before I knew it, it was interesting because I noticed my words start saying, like, I need to do this for me first and foremost, but I'm also doing it for Devin and Brandon and my granddaughter. It was interesting kind of when that transition took place. And I really started finding my worth and my value being okay to be here on this earth. As a mom who lost a son, I very much struggled with it should have been me. It shouldn't have been him. He didn't deserve that. I really had to give myself permission to live again and know that Devin is my biggest champion and he's right here with me. As I continued to grow, I continued to do my work. I've had a lot of trauma in my life. So I spent a lot of time as well doing trauma work around losing Devin, around kind of the emotions that surrounded all of that. I was abused as a child. We all have trauma in our life. And so I just started picking away at one thing at a time. And for me, it's been officially just about 4 years. Within days here, we'll be at 4 years. And I am not only thriving, I think in writing my book, Larger Than Life, A Mother's Love, Loss, and Her Journey Back to Living, it was my way of really stepping into this new version of myself, stepping into the person that I know that I am, really having the strength to go back, not just look at, within the book, I discussed kind of his last day and from when he got sick, when we buried him. But the one area I had found that I never touched on was how absolutely shattered I was once we got home from spreading half of his ashes. I know that within the book, that gave me the space to really be able to pick up on the areas that I had still not dealt with and really focus on, doing the work around that, feeling the emotions. I truly believe the fibro pain that I suffered from and the chronic pain I suffered from for years, I don't believe I'll have any further flare ups as long as I continue to allow myself to feel everything I need to feel the emotions, just not just at a surface level, but to feel the deep, deep emotions that most of my life I had just felt the surface level emotions and pushed everything else within me. I really live from the perspective of living larger than life and embracing everything. So even if an emotion isn't good, I still allow myself to feel that full emotion, know that it's okay to feel it, know that I can handle it, and then just let it pass through me and continue on. One of the big goals that I had when I first started too was I that's the accountant in me. I always give myself goals, but one of the big goals is that I never wanted my granddaughter to remember the grandma who was so unhealthy that she couldn't get down on the floor and play with her when she was little. The grandma who had to sit on the couch while she came and sat beside me so we could do things together. Now she remembers the grandma who goes horseback riding with her all the time. She remembers the grandma who went skydiving at 52. It's really important. I guess my biggest thing is accept that there's going to be bad things in life happen to us, but also really at every level choose to live life fully because we don't know if we have tomorrow. Devin thought he had tomorrow. He didn't get the opportunity to meet his daughter. For me, I have to hold on tightly to what I do have, knowing full well that when it's my time, Devin's waiting there for me, but it's just not my time yet.
Michelle, if my mental arithmetic is correct, you went through 7 years of grief as a result of Devin's passing. But in that 7 years, you kind of collected memories of your childhood. All of that came together and put you in a, I'm going to use a term, you correct me if I'm wrong, in a severe depressive mode until the song The Purple People Eater came. And that was a major epiphany for you, a turning point. You started thinking positively at that point, and through books, meditation, that is a lot of what started you onto a new life. Have I mischaracterized anything?
No, no, that's very much so. And like I said, my granddaughter plays and my other son play a huge role in that as well. I think for me, the biggest thing was just giving myself permission to actually smile again, to be able to move beyond July 25th, 2013, and really knowing that Devin supports me in my journey.
Yes. Let me ask you about the journey and how we might play a part in that. Were you in some form of isolation, or can you help the listener? If there's another person like you, do we make an attempt to establish a relationship, intervene, just talk with you and listen? How can we best interact with you to help you through what you're going through?
Well, and I think the biggest thing is, from the outside, from 2013 to 2020, well, until 2018, when I ended up on bed rest, I looked completely normal on the outside. But on the inside, there was just a lot of turmoil going on. And I think a lot of times I felt very unheard. I felt very people trying to put me on, a shelf like a timid little flower sitting on a shelf. I really didn't feel like I had the support to just feel what I needed to feel to move on. And I think for myself, that played a huge role in how I got to where I was just that I really did not feel like anybody was truly hearing what I needed. I didn't grieve the same way as a lot of other people. I needed to cry. I needed to cry. I needed to wrap my head around the fact that my son was gone. And I think one of the biggest struggles, don't tell somebody just to move on. Like, well, it's about time you start moving forward. Because the more I felt unheard, the more I felt that people weren't understanding me. It literally was putting an invisible shell around me because I didn't feel like I could speak my truth because nobody would listen to me anyway. And I think it's don't compare. I mean, I had someone compare the loss of my son to the loss of their dog. That absolutely blew my mind. That was within, before his funeral even. And I just remember like you're experiencing so many emotions and it's just allowing people to feel what they need to feel. Everybody's different. Everybody has the right to grieve the way they need to grieve for the person that they've lost. And I think that's the biggest piece of advice I can give everybody is just don't tell them it's time to move on. It's time to get over it. It's time to whatever that looks like. It's really just hear what they're saying, hear what they need, listen to them when they say, like, I need this versus well, I say I need this, but then somebody else says, well, no, you don't. You're not grieving right. You're not doing this. You should be moving forward. You should be doing this. And I think in that, it definitely slowed my grieving process down anyway.
I'm processing what you're saying as don't necessarily give us advice, just try to empathize, be willing to listen to us. Is that part of the message, Michelle?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you largely recover on your own? And maybe the word recover implies totally recovered. Maybe you never do, but your turnaround, did other people help you with this? Or would you say in hindsight, yes, you read books, but I mean, did you actively engage with people who became, I'm going to say, a safe space that you felt comfortable confiding in? I'm just curious how this mix went for you.
Um, Yes, absolutely. I did find people who allowed me to kind of move in that direction. I started out completely alone. I was, after spending close to 2 years on bed rest, I was very isolated during that time. I really struggled to be heard by people around me. And so I started myself and I was very determined. And I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm doing this for me. I'm doing it for Devin, doing it for Brandon. As time progressed, and especially as I stepped into the trauma world, I've taken a number of coaching programs as I've gone along because that's where my heart is now. I want to be able to help people from a different perspective. I did go to a couple different psychologists. I just didn't have really great experiences with the ones that I went to. There was a certain couple things said that were just really hard for me to get past. And then one of the other ones, decided to put my emotions in a bucket and just leave them there and end the session and whatnot. And for me, that was very traumatic in some ways, all in itself, because by that point, I had done so much work on my own that I knew that you don't leave your emotions in a bucket and go back to them a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks later. Part of the process is feeling through those emotions. And through the coaching, a couple of the coaching programs that I was in, I've got some really, really close friends now who really just allow me to experience what I need to experience and really feel open to, if I have something coming up, there's a level of trust there with those ladies now that I do have somebody to get in touch with and to talk through. Or if I feel that I need to work through something pretty heavy, I'll get a hold of them and have them work with me to get through that. But for me, that's definitely been the route that has worked the best.
Do you have situations, maybe conversations, anything that can activate the moments of grief, cause you, I'm going to use the term flashbacks? And if yes to that, how do you deal with that?
For myself, I don't really call them flashbacks anymore. I mean, when I was talking earlier, I choked up a few times, and I think it's just where I'm at in the moment. I really accept myself to be where I'm at. Today, talking about Devin and that last day in the hospital, I feel the emotions coming up, but I don't try and suppress them anymore. So, there's always going to be things I can go into the grocery store, and if the Heinz ketchup label has changed, depending upon the day, one day I'll just laugh and the next day it might bring tears to the eyes because when Devin was growing up, that was his biggest pet peeve is when they changed labels. He thought they were wrecking his ketchup. So, but again, for myself, it's not so much that I have flashbacks anymore. It's just really allowing, whether it's a good memory where I just smile, whether it's a funny story that kind of brings a giggle to chuckle out of me, or whether it is a memory that just on that day seems to trigger the sadness that he's not here today. And that is a reality that I live with every day. And so each day is different, but I don't necessarily have flashbacks anymore. No.
Is it generally therapeutic to celebrate Devin's life through conversation, recollection of his past, and so forth? How can you help us with conversations such as that?
I think the biggest thing is really talking about him. Talking about Devin really brings me such a level of comfort. As a mom, I don't want anybody to ever forget who Devin is. One story, I guess, that I'd like to go through is my granddaughter. Again, she never met her dad, but when she got to grade 1, she had to do a project at school. When she brought it home, her mom took a picture and sent it to me right away. She had to draw a picture of her family, and she drew a picture of her holding her mom's hand. Her mom was holding her new husband. Her mom is remarried, is holding her new husband's hand, who is then holding Devin's hand. And even today, that brings tears to my eyes because to me, that's such a huge win as a family, that she knows her dad well enough that she sees that her dad is still a part of her family. I think the biggest damage that we can do is when a child loses a parent, or my daughter-in-law becoming a widow at 21 and just shutting down and not talking about the person that passed away. I grew up in a family that's exactly how it went. Somebody passed away and then it was like, can't talk about them. To me, it's just such a monumental win when you can have a conversation about Devin. And to this day, like, her daughter knows him so well, and yet she never got a chance to meet him. So for myself, that is, to me, those are wins.
What I hear you saying is Devin's positive legacy lives on. We will live with his memory. We certainly would like to have him with us, but we have a very positive memory of Devin's legacy. That is what will live in our hearts. Have I expressed that appropriately?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't want to suppose that everyone grieves the same way, but I think what I'm discerning from you, Michelle, is just be willing and make the attempt to empathize. Do not just walk past, dismiss somebody, and just assume that, well, maybe I don't know how to deal with it or anything like that. Do engage with people, but do attempt to empathize and be willing to listen. Is that somewhat of a general rule to follow?
Absolutely. Listening when someone has lost someone, especially a child, a big part of that is just listening to them. Some days, like I said, I need to talk about Devin. Other days, I need to cry because Devin is no longer here. And it's just accepting us where we're at and realizing that there's no black and white answer on how to grieve someone, whether it's your child, whether it's your parent, whether it's your grandparent, because every single relationship is different, but it's more just accepting people where they're at and offering them that empathy, letting them know that you're there for whatever they need, and leaving it up to them to be the one to reach out. And because sometimes we just need to be alone too.
I think what you just said is very important. There is an appropriate time to be alone. I think in this context, being alone is different from being isolated. I'm thinking of isolation and extended periods of time, but maybe for 24, 46, some number of hours, you just need to be alone to process information. Would that be correct?
Yes, yes. And I think especially those first couple years, that's when it's the most critical. I mean, I really noticed that when Devin passed, his wife was very much, she wanted a whole group of people around her, whereas I was the complete opposite. I just wanted to be at home in my space where I felt Devin closest to me, and just feeling the emotions that I needed to feel. And sitting there, like, I spent hours looking at his picture, and it wasn't the wrong way. It was just, I'm not as much of an extrovert as what she is. And so having all of those people around me actually caused me to have panic attacks after his passing. So it's finding that balance of what each individual person needs.
Very important. Very, very important what you just said. As we are aware of personalities, we need to discern what is best for any given person. For you, the fewer people, the better. In some cases, just leave me alone for a period of time. But then there's some others who need, I'll use the term just euphemistically, a crowd of people around them. But it's whatever works best for that individual. Very important what you just said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not taking offense to it. If they want a bunch of people around, then that's fine. But if you don't want a bunch of people around, that's fine as well. And just whoever the friend is or the family member is who's, who is maybe trying to come into my space, it wasn't that I didn't appreciate that they wanted to be there. It was that I needed that time to kind of process what was really transpiring in my life at that time.
Michelle, on behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you for your candor. I want to thank you as well for the recovery you've made, the help you are to those who we hope never have to experience what you did. But life happens, and it's a matter of all of us coming together to help one another overcome. And when I say all of us, as you just very eloquently said, not everybody needs a big crowd, but be aware of what that person needs. Do what we can to meet that person's need. Michelle, thank you for being very candid. You have a big heart. Thank you for sharing with our audience.
Thank you for having me here today.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and disc personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.